All right, so let's dive deep into something that really changes wine, like adds a whole other dimension to it.
Yeah.
Oak barrels.
Yeah.
We've got these excerpts from barricas,
Hmm.
which, by the way, is Portuguese for barrels.
Oh, cool.
And it seems like the ultimate guide to this whole oak barrel thing. It's all in Spanish, though.
Ah.
But maybe that just adds to the mystique, right?
Yeah, definitely adds to the intrigue, and it's fascinating because using oak barrels, it's not like some new thing. It's not trendy. We're
Right.
talking like thousands of years, all the way back to, the Celts and Romans.
Wow.
Can you believe it? They were using barrels to, ship wine all across Europe.
I mean, talk about a long and winding wine road, right?
Uh-huh, right.
But here's the thing, though. I think back then it was more about practicality than taste.
Totally. Yeah. Like those ancient Romans, they weren't exactly like focused on subtle oak nuances and things like that.
Yep.
The barrels were just like a convenient way to transport wine. But, imagine those long sea voyages with the wine sloshing around in the barrels, slowly picking up these hints of the oak.
Right.
It makes you wonder, like, if that's how people first realized that oak could actually change the flavor of the wine.
That's a great point. Yeah, like over time, what started as just a simple storage solution
Yeah.
became like this essential part of winemaking. And it's not just any old oak that'll do the job, right?
For sure.
Barricas goes into the different types of oak they use for barrels.
Yeah.
And it turns out, like, they're not all created equal.
No, not at all. So you've got your European oaks, like Quercus robur,
Okay.
also known as pedunculate oak.
Oh,
That's like what you find in a lot of those classic French wines.
gotcha.
It brings like a certain structure,
Yeah.
and those spicy, almost earthy notes that develop as the wine ages.
So, like, if I'm having a glass of Bordeaux and it's got those, like, lovely hints of cedar and tobacco,
Mm-hmm.
that's the pedunculate oak doing its thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if you're more into like elegant, subtle wines, say a Burgundy, then you're probably tasting the influence of Quercus petraea or Sessai oak. It's another European oak, but it imparts a more delicate touch, kind of lets the wine's fruit, shine through.
I'm starting to see how the type of oak really, like, sets the stage for the wine's personality. Now, what about American oak? Does that bring something different?
Oh, completely different. Yeah. American white oak, Quercus alba, it's a whole other story. It's bolder,
Okay.
more assertive. Think vanilla, coconut, sometimes even a hint of dill.
Interesting.
It's popular in American wines, of course, but you also see it used in other parts of the world to like add a bit of that New World flair.
So we've got French oak adding structure, spice.
Right.
We've got Sessile oak bringing elegance.
Yeah.
And we've got American oak throwing in those bold flavors.
Mm.
But how do they actually, like, how does the wood itself get transformed into these flavor-enhancing barrels?
Well, first you got to get the right trees.
Okay.
And we're not talking about, saplings.
Like-
These are mature trees.
Wow.
Often 80 to 120 years old. You have to carefully select them, the grain, the density, everything's got to be just right. It's like picking the Olympic athletes of the oak world,
Right. So we've got our oak all-stars.
Yeah.
What happens next? Do they just like chop them down and start slapping barrels together?
No, not quite.
Okay.
There's a whole process of drying the wood.
Yeah.
It can take like 2 to 3 years. They stack the wood outdoors and let the rain, wind, and sun kind of work their magic,
Yeah.
This mellows out the tannins
Right.
and helps develop those aromas that will eventually end up in your glass.
Wow. So even before the barrel's even a barrel, it's already going through this natural transformation.
Yeah.
Like nature's slow cooking method.
Uh-huh.
What happens once the wood has had its time out there in the elements?
Then it's time for the cooper to step in. That's where the real artistry comes in. The cooper uses fire and traditional techniques to bend and shape the wood into staves, which are then assembled into the barrel.
No glue, no nails, just pure craftsmanship. It's amazing to watch.
I bet. I can only imagine the skill and the precision that goes into it, like building a puzzle, but with fire.
Yeah, pretty much.
So then what?
And then comes another step that
Yeah.
has a huge impact on the final flavor,
Alright.
coasting.
Okay, let's talk toasting. I know it involves fire, but what's the point? And how does it affect the wine?
So imagine taking that finished barrel and holding it over a fire.
Oh.
The intensity and duration of that fire will create different levels of toasting. Light, medium, or heavy.
Okay.
And each one brings out different characteristics in the wood.
So it's like choosing like a roast level for your coffee beans, but for oak barrels.
Uh-huh. Exactly.
Uh-huh.
A light toast will give you these like subtle notes of caramel and spice. Medium toast brings out those classic vanilla and coconut flavors.
Mhm.
And heavy toast, that's where things get really intense, smoky, toasty, even a hint of coffee or chocolate.
Wow, so the Cooper's not just building a barrel, they're basically creating like a spice rack for the wine.
Hmm.
And to think we haven't even gotten to the wine itself yet.
Right. And all these choices, from the type of oak to the toasting level, they all play a role in how the wine interacts with the barrel, and how it develops its final flavor profile.
I'm already getting thirsty just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're back, and I'm ready to like really get into how these oak barrels we've been talking about, actually work their magic on the wine.
Yeah.
I'm picturing the barrels like these little flavor factories,
Mm.
just quietly working their magic.
Haha, that's a great way to think about it. It is a slow and subtle process, but the impact, oh, it's undeniable. Like, Burke actually breaks down the science behind it,
Oh, cool.
and it's fascinating stuff. We're talking about things like microoxygenation
Okay.
and extraction.
Microoxygenation. Okay, so I'm guessing that's where like tiny amounts of oxygen get into the barrel through
Yeah.
the wood.
Exactly, yeah. Those little, like, tiny oxygen molecules are like little alchemists. They're just gently interacting with the wine, helping it evolve over time. That's what softens the tannins,
Oh, okay.
gives the wine a more stable color, and really allows those complex aromas to develop.
So it's not just about adding like oak flavor, it's about helping the wine mature
Right.
and reach its full potential.
Exactly.
What about extraction? What exactly is being extracted?
Okay, think of it like this. The wine, it's not just sitting passively in the barrel, it's actually pulling compounds from the wood itself.
Wow.
Tannins, lactones, aldehydes, all these elements that contribute to the wine's structure, the complexity, and those like signature oaky flavors.
Like the wine is having a conversation with the wood,
Hmm.
and they're like each one is influencing the other.
Yeah, I like that analogy. And just like any good conversation, the outcome depends on who's involved. The type of wine, the oak species,
Right.
the toasting level, they all play a role in shaping the final result.
So let's talk about how this plays out for like different wines. Because I'm guessing a big, bold Cabernet Sauvignon is going to have a different experience in the barrel than, say, like a delicate Pinot Grigio.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's start with the reds. Those robust reds like Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Syrah,
Okay.
they really benefit from the structure and complexity that oak aging provides.
So those big reds get even more muscle from hanging out in oak.
In a way, yeah. The tannins soften, the aromas become more integrated, and you start to get those layers of flavor that develop over time. Leather, tobacco, earthiness.
Yeah.
Nuances you wouldn't find in a young wine.
So the oak is adding its own character, but it's also like helping the wine's inherent character kind of evolve.
Uh-huh.
Now, what about white wines? I know some whites are aged in oak, but it seems like it would be easy to overwhelm those more delicate flavors.
You're right. It's a more delicate dance with white wines.
Yeah.
A classic example is Chardonnay.
Oh.
Some Chardonnays even fermented in oak barrels, which adds, richness and complexity. Mm-hmm.
Those buttery, toasty notes that people often associate with oaked Chardonnay.
Ah, so those buttery flavors I love in a good Chardonnay, that's the oak talking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other white wines might just be aged in oak for like a shorter period,
Okay.
just to add a touch of vanilla or spice without masking the fruit.
Right.
It's all about finding the right balance.
So oak can be a powerful tool for both red and white wines, but it's all about understanding how to use it effectively.
Right.
What about sparkling wines? I don't often think about oak when I'm, popping open a bottle of bubbly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's true. Oak isn't as common with sparkling wines, but some producers, they do use barrels,
Okay.
either for the secondary fermentation or to age the base wine.
Mm.
It can add a layer of complexity,
Okay.
those toasty notes that complement the bubbles really nicely.
So even bubbly can get in on the oak action.
Uh-huh, yeah.
And what about those fortified wines like port? I know they spend a lot of time in barrels.
Absolutely.
Ah.
Fortified wines like port and Madeira are often aged in oak for long periods.
Sometimes even decades. And the oak plays a crucial role in developing their unique character, those nutty, oxidized flavors, and the incredible longevity that makes them so special.
So it's like the barrels aren't just adding flavor, they're almost like time capsules,
Right.
preserving these wines for, generations to come.
It's a beautiful way to think about it. And, what's fascinating is the use of oak. It's not limited to a specific region.
Right.
It's truly a global phenomenon.
Okay, so let's take a quick world tour of oak. Where are some of the key regions where barrels are used?
Well, France is, the obvious place to start.
Right.
They've been aging wine in oak for centuries, and different regions even have their own preferences. For example, like Bordeaux, with its powerful reds, often relies on Quercus robur,
Oh,
while Burgundy, known for its more elegant Pinot Noirs,
yeah.
favors Quercus petraea.
So even within France, there's this whole world of oak nuances to explore.
Absolutely.
What about the U.S.?
Oh, in the U.S., American white oak is like the star, lending its bold, vanilla and coconut notes to everything from Chardonnay to Zinfandel. It's like
Ah.
a signature flavor profile of many American wines.
So if I'm tasting a California Zinfandel and it's got those like pronounced vanilla notes,
Yeah,
that's probably the American oak influence.
most likely, yeah. And then we have Italy with its long history of using those large oak vats called botti.
Right.
They also incorporate French and American oak barrels, depending on the style of wine they're making.
It's a blend of like tradition and innovation.
Yeah.
What about other parts of the world?
Well, oak is used pretty much all over. Spain's Rioja region, for example, is known for using American oak
Oh.
to achieve those like warm, spicy notes in their wines.
Hmm.
Portugal relies heavily on oak for aging those, legendary fortified wines like
Bro.
Port and Madeira.
Yeah.
Argentina, Chile, Australia, they all use oak to enhance their wines,
Yeah.
often choosing, different types of oak to achieve specific flavor profiles.
It's incredible how oak has become like this universal language in winemaking.
Hmm.
But I imagine not every winemaker is, like on board with this whole oak trend.
Yeah, that's true. Some winemakers prefer to let the grape varietal kind of speak for itself,
Right.
minimizing or even avoiding oak altogether.
Yeah.
It's all about style and preference.
But it's about finding the right balance, letting the wine kind of express its own personality, whether that's with a little oaky assistance or flying solo. Right.
Exactly.
But let's be real, those like traditional oak barrels are a bit of an investment.
Oh, yeah.
I'm guessing there are some, alternatives out there for winemakers who are like maybe working with a tighter budget or limited space.
Yeah, you're right. Oak barrels, they can be a significant investment. That's why you see alternatives like oak chips and
Yeah.
oak stays becoming more popular. They're basically pieces of oak that can be added to wine tanks to impart some of those oaky flavors.
Yep.
Without the cost and space requirements of barrels.
So it's like a budget-friendly way to get some of that oak influence.
Exactly. Oak chips are the most affordable option, but they don't offer the same complexity.
Right.
And microoxygenation as a barrel.
Okay.
Oak saves are a step up. They provide more surface area for interaction
Gotcha.
and allow for better integration of aromas.
It's like choosing between like a splash of oak flavor and like a full-on oak immersion.
Uh-huh. Yeah. Good way to put it.
Now, I have to ask, are there any winemakers out there who are experimenting with woods other than oak? I'm picturing like some mad scientist winemaker
Right.
in a lab coat surrounded by barrels made from like all these exotic woods.
Well, maybe not mad scientists, but there are definitely innovative winemakers out there who are, pushing the boundaries.
Yeah.
Acacia wood is gaining some traction. It brings these floral honeyed notes to the wine.
Interesting.
Chestnut's another option, known for its nutty, spicy character
Okay.
and its ability to enhance oxidative aging.
So it's exciting to see how like winemakers are experimenting and challenging those like traditional methods.
Yeah.
Speaking of pushing boundaries, what are some of the trends and innovations happening in the world of oak barrels themselves?
Well, one trend is custom toasting. Coopers are working closely with winemakers to create barrels with very specific toast levels
Okay.
and profiles tailored to the individual wines they'll be aging.
Interesting.
It's like bespoke tailoring, but for wine barrels.
So it's not just about choosing light, medium, or heavy toast anymore. It's about creating the perfect like oak canvas for each wine.
Exactly. And there's a lot of interest in exploring new sources of oak.
Okay.
Winemakers are looking beyond those traditional French forests, seeking out sustainably managed forests
Right.
with unique oak varieties that can bring new flavors and dimensions to their wines.
So it's like a treasure hunt for the perfect oak tree.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
What about technology? I imagine there's some like cool innovations happening in the way barrels are made these days.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Technology's playing a role in everything, from drying and toasting the wood to analyzing the composition of the wood itself. This allows for greater precision and control, ensuring consistency and quality.
So it's a blend of like ancient craftsmanship and modern technology.
Yeah, it's a cool combination.
And that leads us to perhaps the most exciting development of all,
Yeah.
the scientific research that's happening around oak and wine.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Scientists are like delving deep into the mysteries of this whole wine oak interaction,
Mm.
studying how different compounds in the wood influence, the wine's flavor, aroma, structure. The more we understand this complex relationship, the more we can appreciate the artistry and science that goes into every bottle of oak-aged wine.
This has been such an eye-opening exploration of oak barrels and, their impact on wine.
Yeah.
I feel like I have a whole new level of appreciation for what goes into crafting those complex flavors I enjoy so much.
I think that's the beauty of knowledge, right? It enhances our enjoyment
Right.
and deepens our appreciation. We've covered a lot of ground here, but there are still some fascinating questions to ponder.
Right. We've gone from ancient Roman wine routes to modern-day scientific labs.
Yeah.
But there's always more to discover. So, let's, why don't we wrap up with some final thoughts,
Okay.
takeaways for our listener,
Yeah.
as well as maybe some questions to keep them thinking about oak and wine.
Yeah, that sounds great.
So we've covered a lot of ground, haven't we? I mean, the history of oak barrels, the science
Yeah.
behind how they change the wine.
It's been a journey.
Yeah, we even talked about those alternatives and some of the cool innovations that are happening.
Right.
But I think what's so fascinating is that something as simple as a wooden barrel
Yeah,
can totally change what we end up, tasting in our glass.
for sure.
It just reminds you that even the tiniest details,
Yeah.
they make a difference.
Absolutely. It's a real testament to the dedication and passion of the winemakers out there who are
Mhm.
constantly trying to, perfect their craft.
So for our listeners out there who might be feeling like, whoa, information overload, right?
Mhm.
What are some of the key takeaways that they can use to, really kind of enhance their own wine journey?
I think, first and foremost, just pay attention to the oak. Don't
Yeah.
just see it as a background note. It's
Yeah.
like a key character in the wine's story. Look for information on the label
Right.
or, ask your wine merchant, what type of oak was used? Was it French oak, American oak,
Right.
or something, a little more exotic?
Okay, that's a great tip.
Yeah.
And once we know, what kind of oak, how do we use that information
Yeah.
to better understand, what we're tasting?
Well, think back to what we talked about with the different oak species
Right.
and those flavor profiles, So if you're sipping on a wine and you're getting those subtle notes of spice and cedar, it might be French oak.
Gotcha.
But if you're getting more of a vanilla coconut vibe, that could be American oak.
It's like having a secret decoder ring
Uh-huh.
for wine.
Yeah.
And the more we taste and pay attention, the more we recognize those oaky nuances, right?
Exactly. And remember, oak isn't just about, adding flavor.
Mm.
It also influences the wine's texture, the structure, the aging potential. So the next time you're choosing a wine, think about how those oaky characteristics might go with the food you're having or
Right.
the occasion you're celebrating.
I love that. It's about using this newfound oak knowledge that we've gotten to make, more informed choices
Yeah.
and just really elevate our enjoyment of wine.
Yeah, definitely.
But before we, wrap things up, I'd love to hear your thoughts on something.
Mm-hmm.
So we've talked about how oak barrels have been used for thousands of years, but how do you see this practice kind of evolving in the future?
That's a great question. And it's something that a lot of winemakers are thinking about right now.
Yeah.
As we all become more aware of the environmental impact of our choices,
Right.
I think we're going to see more emphasis on sustainable oak sourcing
Mm-hmm.
and forest management.
Yeah, makes sense. We can't keep relying on those old growth forests forever.
Exactly. And I think as consumers get, more adventurous and open to trying new things, I
Mhm.
think we'll see more experimentation with, alternative woods, toasting techniques.
Mm.
We might even see technology playing a bigger role in the future of oak barrels.
It's exciting to think about all the possibilities. But no matter how technology changes or how tastes change, I have a feeling those oak barrels are going to keep playing a big role
Yeah,
in the wines that we love for a long time to come.
I think so too. There's just something timeless and kind of magical about the way oak and wine work together.
Mm-hmm.
It's a testament to the power of nature and human ingenuity.
And on that note, I think it's time to raise a glass, maybe one with a touch of oak, and toast the ongoing journey of discovery in the world of wine. Thanks for joining us. And remember, keep exploring, keep tasting, keep learning. Cheers.